page 43. We'll start at the Mishnah, page 42b, 17 lines from the bottom of the page. Just a short introduction. Here we talk about the Hilchot Mashkon, the law of deposit, obviously the certain thing that we require to take an oath, or some situation that we're not asked to take an oath. Sometimes there are people who borrow money and the other party gives them with the trust and understanding that they're going to pay it back. Unfortunately, as we learned yesterday and day before yesterday, there are those individuals who take advantage of a system, especially people who are gullibly agree upon giving those loans with keeping the words or promises, and then the other party denies part or deny all of the loan. So here the Mishnah lists item for which you do not have by Torah law a requirement to impose an oath. Ve'elu dvarim she'en nishba'in alehem. Here you have a list of things for which we do not swear an oath. So it means that the biblical oath that we mentioned at the beginning of this period, not just the oath for admitting part of the claim. So they said ha'avadim. So if a person make a claim, in those days it was a Canaanite slave. So a person make a claim over them. So ve'ashtarot, or if there are documents that allow the owner to collect money from someone. So the Gemara in Bava Batra, pages 75b and 76, explain to us that a person who owed money can sell the debt to someone else. And the standard way of doing this is by giving document. In those days they used to do it, they give the document in which the debt is recorded to the buyer. Ve'akarkaot, later when we explain how, is a situation that land can be transferred, etc. In a way you can call it stealing land, how you can steal land, but there are situations like that. For example, asagat gvul, later we learn. Ve'hahekdeshot, and things that were consecrated to the Beit HaMikdash, to the Holy Temple, which called Hekdesh. So when any of these items is involved, there is no requirement for biblical oath, even if someone admits to part of the claim or he contradicts the testimony of one witness, or if the person was a guardian, a shomer, things, taking care of an item for someone else, so he does not swear the Torah oath that this situation usually demand. So they said, because the Torah excludes those items from the law of oath, because if you zoom in the book of Shmot, book of Exodus, chapter 22, verse 8, they say that is the law of oath states, and I just read the translation, for every item of liability, whether an ox or donkey, a sheep or a garment, regarding any lost item about which he says, this is it, to the court shall come both their claim. So here our Gemara, soon you see, learns that from this pasuk, an oath is imposed by the court only for items that are similar to an ox, donkey, sheep, or garments. It's all those, it's called metaltalin, all movable items that have their own value. It's called in the Talmudic language, gufo mammon. It excludes in general term land, which obviously is not movable, avadim, Canaanite slave, which the Torah elsewhere compared to the land. You see the Gemara in Kiddushin 22b. And documents, which though it's movable, but do not have their own value, but they are merely a means to acquire the debt which is in them. So since an earlier pasuk Vav, refers to a man who has claim against his fellow, his friend, oath to the temple treasury, which called Hekdesh, are excludes as well. So here the Mishnah lists other laws that do not apply to the 4 items we just mentioned. En bahem tashlumei kefel. These, they are not subject to a double payment if they are stolen. Because if you remember, we learned earlier, a person who steals someone's property, he must pay back double to what he stole. So here we have the teaching in this Mishnah that this penalty does not apply to slaves, to shtarot, to documents, to land and hekdesh that are stolen. These two is learned from the pasuk cited in a previous statement. Velo tashlumei arba'a v'chamisha, nor the 4-fold or 5-fold payment for a sheep or ox from hekdesh and then slaughtered or sold. So we learn that if a person who steals a sheep, or in those days an ox, and slaughter and sell it, he paid the owner 4 and 5 times its value. So here the Mishnah teaches that this does not apply to animals designated as Ekdesh. It's because the 4-fold and 5-fold payments include the double payment of a regular thief, plus another 2 or 3 times the value of the sheep or ox. Since someone who steals Hekdesh animals is not subject to the double payment, he is also not subject to these higher payments. Shomer chinam eino nishba, an unpaid guardian who was giving one of these items to watch and claims that it was stolen or lost, does not have to swear about it, because originally the way that we take in a regular situation, if unpaid guardian claims that the item was given to watch was stolen or lost, he must swear that his claim is true and that he was not negligent in guarding it. So he is then exempt from paying for it. So here the Mishnah teaches that this requirement of swearing does not apply to the 4 type of property listed here. You see it from those examples that the pasuk said in Shemot 22:6, silver coins and vessels. So those items have in common all the characteristics that we mention here, but it exclude same type of property. You see more in Gemara Bava Metzia, we learn page 57b. Noseh sachar, a paid guardian, a paid shomer, does not have to pay for them, eino meshalem, if they were stolen or lost. So ordinarily, a paid guard must pay for items that are stolen from him or lost. Here we learn in Mishnah that this does not apply to the 4 type of property that we mentioned earlier. Here, too, the pasuk in Shemot 22:9 is phrased in a way that it's similar to the pasuk regarding to unpaid shomer. So that's exclude the 4 type of property. But basically all of these are learned from the psukim that dealing with all these laws. Now the Mishnah cites a Tana who maintain that oaths are imposed to a certain type of Hekdesh. Rabbi Shimon says, Kodashim shechayav ba'acharayutan nishba'in alehem. We swear an oath for claims regarding Kodashim, which is animal designated as offering, for which a person is responsible, that is, which he must replace it if they're lost. Such animals are considered the owner's property as well as that of Hekdesh, and they are therefore subject to oath. There are two ways to donate an offering. A person can say about a specific animal, this is hereby an olah offering, or we can say, I take upon myself to bring an olah offering, without designating any specific animal. Later, he sets aside an animal and said, this is my obligation, and the animal then becomes consecrated as an olah. Olah is used here merely just as an example. If he donates the offering the first way, his only obligation is to bring that animal to the temple to be offered on the altar. If that animal gets lost or dies, he has no obligation to bring another in its place, because he never obligated himself to do anything more than bring that particular animal as an olah. However, if he donates the second way and the animal dies or is lost, he does have an obligation to replace it, since his original commitment was, quote unquote, to bring an olah, not any specific animal. So here you see the view of Rabbi Shimon, that he argues that where the owner is responsible to replace the donated animal, it is considered in some measure his property, even though it is Hekdesh, which is holy. So consequently, if someone makes a claim against a person about such an animal, the defenders swear the Torah oath that applies for that claim. That's the view of the explanation of the Rashi. For example, if he claims that someone stole such an olah animal from him before he had the chance to bring it to the temple, and a single witness supports the claim, the accused person will have to swear an oath to contradict the single witness in order to be free from paying the claim. Since the person making the claim will have to replace the stolen offering if he does not get it back, it is considered in some degree his, and he can therefore demand an oath about it. That's according to Rabbi Shimon. ושאינו חייב באחריותן, אין נשבעים עליהם. But we do not swear an oath for claims regarding those offerings for which a person is not responsible, that is, which he does not have to replace if they are lost. These are considered solely for the purpose of Hekdesh and no longer the owner. So the first Tana, however, holds that any animal that is a Hekdesh is no longer considered the owner property, even if he is responsible for it. So therefore, he cannot demand an oath about it. Rabbi Meir says, יש דברים שהן בקרקע ואינן כקרקע. There are things that are in the ground, that are still attached to the ground, but they are not considered like the ground in regard to swearing an oath about them. Rather, they are treated as movable items, and the person swears an oath about them, even though they are still attached to the ground. Ve'ein chachamim modim lo. But the sages do not agree with him. They treat these things like land, and the person does not swear an oath about them. Keitzad, give me an example for this. 10 גפנים תאונות מסרתי לך. If someone says to a person, I gave you 10 grape-laden vines in my land to watch for me, with grapes that were ready to be picked. והלה אומר לו, and the person responds and said to him, אינן אלא 5. No, it's only 5. So what happened here? the Shomer claims that he was giving only 5 grape laden of vine to watch, and he is now returning them. So he denies ever having been assigned to watch the other 5 vines, and he is therefore not responsible for the grapes. So we see here that he admits to part of the claim, modeh b'miktzat. So we said, Rabbi Meir mechayev shvuah. Rabbi Meir obligates the person to swear an oath of someone who admits to part of the claim. Since the grapes were ready to be picked and no longer needed to be attached to the tree and the ground, they are considered as if they had already been picked. So although the grapes happen to still be attached to the ground through the vine, since they are ripe and no longer need to draw any nutrients from the ground, so Rabbi Meir treats them as if they were already picked. Hence, they are not considered quote-unquote land, but movable items for which a person swears an oath. V'chachamim omrim, and the sages say, Kol hamechubar lakarka hareihu kakarka, which means anything attached to the ground is considered like the ground. So even if it no longer needs to be attached, so he can therefore not be made to swear about the grapes from the other 5 trees, since the Torah oath do not apply to claims about things that are legally considered land. So a general rule about oath for admitting to a part of the claim, ein nishba'in, a person take an oath, a swear, אלא על דבר שבמידה ושבמשקל ושבמניין. A person swears an oath for admitting part of the claim only about something that has either a specific measure, a specific weight, or a specific number. So the person making the claim must mention a specific measure, weight, or number when he makes the claim, and the one denying it must admit to a small measure, weight, or number. Only in such a case is there an oath for admitting part of the claim. Keitzad. Give me an example to that. Bait maleh masarti lach, v'chis maleh masarti lach. If someone said, I handed over to you a house full of produce to watch for me, or I handed over to you a purse full of money to watch for me. Ve'ala omer, and the other person said, I have no idea, eini yodea. I don't know exactly how much produce or money you gave me because you did not measure it, weighted, or counted in my presence. Ela ma she'inachta ta notel. But whatever you left with me, you are now taking back. And this is less than a household or the way that he thought. Patur is not obligated to swear that this is what all he received. It's because neither the claim nor the admission were about a specific measure, weight, or number. So saying that that is a full house or purse is not considered a measure, it's not weight or it's not a number, because Tosfot Yotov explain that even if the house or purse is missing a few items, people still call it full. Ze omer ad haziz, the claimant, he said that the produce filled the house is up to the beam by the ceiling, the beam that supports the second floor, which is visible just below the ceiling of the first floor. V'ze omer ad hachalon, and the person who been guarding it says that the produce filled the house up to the window. Chayav, then he is obligated to swear that he never received more, because the claim was about measurable amount, and the admission was also for a measurable part of that amount. So now we go to the Gemara, and the Gemara tells us the source that we basically exempt from kefil, double payment, when it's come to document a slave's land and hekdesh. Tashlumei kefil menalan, from where we learn that the thief is not assigned to double-fold penalty payment for stealing any of the property enumerated in the Mishnah. The Tanu Rabbanan, the Torah tells us in the book of Shemot, chapter 22, verse 8, Al kol dvar pesha klal, al shor al chamor al seva al salma prat, al kol aveda chazar v'chalal. One of the principles of Rabbi Ishmael is what? Klal ufrat uchlal, I atadan ela ke'eina prat. When you have a generalization, follow a specification, follow another generalization, you may expound the overall law to include only those things that are similar to the specification. Ma haprat meforash. The same way as the specified item is clearly something that is movable, דבר המיטלטל וגופו ממון, that have instinctive value, אף כל דבר המיטלטל וגופו ממון. יצאו, what you excluded? יצאו קרקעות. So you exclude land because it's not movable. שאין מיטלטלים. יצאו עבדים, also you exclude slaves, שהוקשו לקרקעות, that are basically compared to land. That's part of what we learned earlier. יצאו שטרות, we exclude a document שאף על פי שהם מטלטלים, that even, as we explained in the Mishnah, even they are movable, אין גופן ממון, which is they don't have their own intrinsic value, because they only prove ראיה לחוב. So when it's come to הקדש, the Torah said, ראהו כתיב, so it means only ראהו we pay double, not הקדש, that it's not considered ראהו. Then the Mishnah continues, ולא תשלומי כפל, ולא 4 ו5. מה איתם עד תשלומי 4 ו5? אמר רחמנא, ולא תשלומי 3 ו4. So it means that's not part of what the Torah requires, so therefore is exempt from these payments to the temple treasury if he stole, then slaughtered or sold consecrated sheep or ox. שומר חינם אינו נשבע. The unpaid custodian does not swear concerning these properties. Menan Emile, from where do we learn this ruling? The Tanu Rabbanan, that's the way that the rabbis teaches us in the Braita. 43, Ki ten ish el re'ehu. Here is the oath of an unpaid custodian. The Torah tells us in Shemot Kavbet, Exodus 22, verse 6. Ki 10, if a man gives to his fellow, that's klal, that's the general principle, anything that the person gives. Kesef or kelim, then the Torah said money and or utensils, so that's prat, obviously that's a specific. And then finally the Torah concludes, lishmor, to watch, chazar vechalal, anything that can be watched. כלל, the same rule, כלל ופרט וכלל ידנה כן הפרט. מה הפרט? מפורש, דבר המטלטל וגופו ממון, אף כל דבר המטלטל וגופו ממון. Same way, here is anything that's movable and has instinctive value. יצאו, you basically excluded, קרקעות, which is land, שאין מטלטלין, יצאו עבדים שהוגשו לקרקעות, יצאו שטרות שעבד מי שמטלטלים על גופם ממון, Hekdesh re'eu ktiv. So that's basically the same limud as we said earlier. So you see here that the custodians does not swear when it's come to property that belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, to the temple treasury. Noseh sachar, a paid custodian, Mishnah said, Eino meshalem. If the enumerated property are lost or stolen, he doesn't need to pay. Menalan, how do you know it? So here we zoom in Shemot Kavbet, Exodus 22 verse 9. The Tanu Rabbanan ki iten ish et re'ehu, the same limud, klal. חמור אשר עושה פרט, וכל במה לשמור חזר וחלל, כלל ופרט ובכלל, וכולי, עד הקדש ראהו כתיב, the same מהלך. רבי מאיר אומר, רבי מאיר says, יש דברים שהן כקרקע ואינן כקרקע. בכלל דרבי מאיר סבר, כל המחובר לקרקע אינו כקרקע. So he said that anything that is attached to the ground are not treated as land with respect to the law of oath. עד למפלגי בתאונות, so they said, rather than arguing about grape-laden vines, לפלגי בסרוקות, Rabbi Meir and the sages argue about empty vines. So why you deal specifically with the case of grape-laden vines? So they said, some said Ela, some not, but anyway, אמר רבי יוסי בר רבי חנינא, הכה בענבים העומדות להיבצר כמפלגי. Here we talk specifically about the grapes that's ready to be harvested. דרבי מאיר סבר כי בשורות דאמיין. Rabbi Meir said you treated like it's already harvested. ורבנן סברי and the sages hold, לא כבצורות דמיין. That is not, the grapes are not regarded as already harvested. So because they classified even the grapes as land, the sages excuse the defender from swearing. אין נשבעים אלא על דבר שבמידה ושבמשקל. So they swear only concerning something that defined by measure, weight, or number. So therefore one who admits to a claim for a house full of produce doesn't need to swear. Omar Abaye, so now the Gemara limited. And Abaye says that, לא שנו אלא אמר לי בית סתם. אבל אמר לי בית זה מלא, ידיענה טענתי. So if he said just general, the plaintiff said just general house. But if he said this particular house wall of produce, so the defender claim of partial liability is precisely known, and therefore he must swear. Omar le Rava, so Rava objected and said, יאחי הלתני ספר. זה אומר זה עזיז, וזה אומר על החלון חייב לפלוג ונדלה בדידה. ואומר דברים הם בית מלא, אבל בית זה מלא חייב. אלא אמר רבא על עולם אינו חייב, עד שיטענו בדבר שבמידה במשקל ובמניין. So the plaintiff sue him for something that he defines by either measure, weight, or number. ויודה לו בדבר שבמידה במשקל ובמניין. When the defender admits one of the three. תניא כבתי דרבא, קור תבואה לי בידך, אבל אומר אין לך בידי פטור. מנורה גדולה יש לי בידך, אין לי בידך אלא מנורה קטנה, פטור. אזורה גדולה יש לי בידך, אין לי בידך אלא אזורה קטנה, פטור. אבל אמר לו, קור תבואה יש לי בידך, אבל אומר אין לך בידי אלא לתך, חייב. If he says the core and the other said no, the only letech, so he's chayav, the defender is obligated to swear because it's modeb miktzad, it's partial admission, oath, he partially admits to the claim. מנורה בת 10 ליטרין יש לי בידך, אין לך בידי, אלא בת 5 ליטרין חייב. כללו של דבר, general principle is this, לעולם אינו חייב, it's the only obligation, עד שיתעננו בדבר שבמידה ושבמשקל ושבמניין, ויודה לו, and he admitted, all three, שבמידה, שבמשקל ושבמניין. Something that is defined by measure, weight, or number. כללו של דבר לטוי יומי. The general principle to what it's to include. לאו לטוי בית זה מלא. It's not to include this particular house full of produce. So it's in the partial admission the same. He said no. ומה ישנה מנורה גדולה ומנורה קטנה? מה שטענו לא הודע לו, מה שהודע לו לא טענו. היא אחי בת 10, בת 5 נעמי, מה שטענו לו לא הודע לו, מה שהודע לו לא טענו. אמר רב שמואל בר יצחק, הכה במנורה של חוליות עסקינן, דקמוד עלי מיני, the plaintiff have the same type of property that was claimed. So only the dispute is the number of parts that a candlestick contains. Yachi azora name nitnei. So we should also take about belt. So if the plaintiff claims a belt 10 amot long and the defender admits to owing the 5 amot long, so the defender is obligated to swear. Velukme b'delaife. So he stitches together. Ela the life lo katane. The Bible does not teach the stitches together. Hachanam b'shel chuliot lo katane. Here also, the Braita not teach us a situation of a candlestick composed of sections, which in a way it's kind of rare. So, so since we said that the Bible talk about single piece of candlestick, so you have the same question stay, why defender must swear does not admit the same property that was claimed. So the Gemara explained that Rabbi Abba bar Ma'amal, Shan menorah yohil v'yachol legorah u'la'amida al 5 litrim. So here we have a different story. The candlestick, it's because he can scrape the 10-liter candles and reduce it to the weight of 5. So he must swear since the admission involved the type of property that was claimed. Mishnah Kedosha. Hamalve et chavero ala mashkon. So here we have the last Mishnah of this parak. And a lender who takes security for a loan, so it means that he takes an item or value from the borrower as a guarantee for the loan. Such an object is known as a security, in Hebrew is mashkon, is considered a shomer sachar, a paid guardian. So it means if it's lost or stolen, he must pay the borrower the value, because the lender is basically responsible for the loss of the security, and he deducts its value from the amount of the loan. After doing so, he asks for payment for what is left on the loan. So therefore, there are 2 shekels in the seller. If the security is worth the same amount as the loan is considered paid up. If it was worth more than the loan, the lender must pay the difference to the borrower. If it was worth less than the loan, the borrower must pay the difference to the lender. So the Mishnah discusses these cases in regards to oath. Hamalve et chavero ala mashkon. Ve'avad mashkon. Someone lends a person money on security and the security was lost or stolen, and they now disagree about how much the security was worth. So the Mishnah will now present 4 cases and state the law for each of them. First case. Amar lo selel v'ticha alav v'shekel haya shaveh. If the lender says to the borrower, I lent you a seller on it, and the security was worth only a shekel, half of a seller, so you still owe me a shekel. Bala omer lo ki, and the borrower's reply said not so. El ha-sela el vitani alav v'sela haya shaveh. You lend me a seller on it, and it was worth the entire seller. So I owe you nothing, but 2, the borrower is not obligated to swear an oath. It was a full seller because he denies owing the lender anything. So, in effect, what the borrower is saying is that that the debt is completely paid. So since the lost security was worth as much as the loan, it's now up to the lender to prove that the security was worth less than the amount of the loan. However, since the lender was considered paid guardian for the security, he must swear the oath that any shomer must swear, an oath that he did not keep the object for himself. This is an oath that the sages required even from a shomer who pays for a lost item. The reason for this oath, we explain, you see it later, you see it later in the Gemara. But anyway, Selal v'ticha alav v'shekel haya shaveh. If the lender says to the borrower, I lent you a seller on it, and the security was worth only a shekel, so you still owe me a shekel, which is equal to 2 dinar. Vala omer, and the other party said, that the borrower, lo, ki ela sela el vitani alav v'shlosha dinarim haya shaveh. He says, no, not so. Rather, you lend me a seller on it, and the security was worth 3 dinars. So I now owe you only 1 dinar, not 2. So there are 2 dinars in a shekel, and 2 shekels in a seller. So the seller is worth 4 dinars. So the Mishnah said, Chayav, the borrower is obligated to swear an oath that the security was worth 3 dinars, because he admits that he still owes part of the claim. So you see here the lender claims that the borrower still owes him 2 dinar, while the borrower admits that he owes 1. since he admits part of the lender's claim, he must swear an oath that the security was worth 3 and he owes only 1 dinar. So in addition to the borrower swearing, the lender must also swear that the item of security is no longer in his possession. That's the Gemara in Bava Metzia 35. And he said, as you see in the previous 2 cases, the lender claimed that the security was worth less than the amount of the loan, so that the borrower still owed him the difference. In the next 2 cases, the borrower demands money from the lender, claiming that the security was worth more than the loan, so that he is now owed the difference. So you have here the 3rd case. Sela el vitani alav ushtayim haya shaveh. If the borrower said to the lender, you lent me a sela on it, and the security was worth 2 selas, so now you owe me the extra sela. ועלה אומר, לא, כי אלא סלע הלוויתיך עליו וסלע היה שווה. And the lender replied, no, I lent you sela on it, and it was worth only a sela, so I owe you nothing. Patu, the lender is not obligated to swear that the security was worth only a sela because he denies owing anything. So it's now up to the borrower to prove that the security was worth more than the loan. The 4th case, Sela elvitani alav ushtayim haya shaveh. If the borrower said to the lender, you lent me a sela on it, and the security was worth 2 selas, so now you owe me an extra sela, which is 4 dinars. ועלה אומר לא, כי אלא סלע הלוויתיך עליו ו5 דינרים היה שווה. And the lender replies, not so, rather I lent you a sela on it, and the security was worth 5 dinars. So I now owe you 1 dinar, not 4. Chayav, the lender is obligated to swear that the security was worth 5 dinars because he admits to owing part of the claim. So the borrower claims that the lender owes him a sela, which is 4 dinars, and the lender admits that he owes him 1 dinar. So you see here that he admits part of the borrower claim. He must therefore swear that the security was worth 5 dinars in order to be free from paying the extra 3 dinars. Now the Mishnah now return to the 2nd case, where the borrower must swear that the security was worth 3 dinars and not just 2 as the lender claims. However, since the lender is in all of these cases is considered to have been a paid guardian for the security, he must also swear an oath that the security is no longer in his possession. So the reason for this oath is that the sages were afraid that a shomer might decide he would like to keep the item that was given into his care and pay for it. So he therefore claims that it was lost or stolen, so that he will pay for it and keep it for himself. To prevent this, they require the shomer to swear that the item is no longer in his possession, and you see it in the Tiferet Israel in the Mishnah in Bava Metzia 35. So here the Mishnah teaches the order in which the borrower and lender swear these oaths. Umi nishba, who swears first? Mi shehapikadon etzlo, the one who was in possession of the deposit, which is the security, before it was stolen or lost. In other words, the lender swears first that the security is no longer in his possession. Why? Shema yishava ze v'yotzi alai et hapikadon. Otherwise, this one, the borrower must swear that the security was worth the higher amount without having carefully assessed its value. And the other one, the lender, will then bring out the deposit and show that it was worth less than the borrower claimed. This will disqualify the borrower from future testimony and oath. So someone who has been found guilty or swearing falsely is no longer believed with an oath, and his testimony is also no longer believed. So to prevent this, the sages require the lender to swear first that he no longer has the security in his possession, and then have the borrower swear how much it was worth. Page 43b. Gemara. So here the Gemara basically analyzes the Mishnah, the very end, the Takanat Chachamim, that said that regardless, whatever the malve, the lender, take an oath, otherwise they take the mashkon, the borrower took an oath. So it said aheya. So what exactly the rule on the conclusion of the Mishnah? V'teipoklei ilei ma'aseifa. If you tell me that it's the conclusion of the Mishnah, v'teipoklei deshvuah gabei malve. So you should derive by the Tana that the oath belonged to the lender. Why? Because you go the way that the Torah required it. And in a Torah law, the lender partially acknowledged the borrower claim, so by the Torah law is obligated to swear. That's the Gemara in Bava Metzia, page 34b. So why then would the Tana refer to a special person? He said perhaps this one will swear. Amar Shmuel Areisha. First one in the Mishnah. V'chen amar Rabbi Chia barav Areisha v'chen amar Rabbi Yochanan Areisha. So the Gemara asks, my Areisha. Running out of time? Okay. So the Gemara said, Seifa de Reisha. סלע על ביתיך עליו, ושקל היה שווה ועלה, אומר לו, כי אל הסלע על ביתני עליו ו3 דינרים היה שווה, חייב לשבוע גבי לובי. ושקלו הרבנן מלווה ושדיו המלווה. ואשד אמר, רב אשי, אז גמור בבא מציאה 35, דקיימלן, זה נשבע, שאינה ברשותו, וזה נשבע כמה היה שווה. הכי אמר, מי נשבע תחילה? מי שהפיקדון אצלו? שמה יישבע זה, ויוציא עליי את הפיקדון? אומר שמואל, היימן באוזפי אלפא זוזה לחברי, if someone lend to his fellow 1,000 זוז, ומשכן לי קטע דמגלה, אם עבד קטע דמגלה, עבד אלפא זוזי, אבל תרתי קעתי, לא, if it's too not. רב נחמן דיסגרי, ורב נחמן אמר, אפילו תרתי קעתי, עבד חדה, עבד 500, עבד אידך, עבד כולי. אבל קטע ונסקה, לא. Another opinion, נהר דאמרי, אפילו קטע ונסקה, עבד נסקה, עבד פלגה, עבד קטע, עבד כולי.